Hello, and welcome to Sound and Image Lab, the Dolby Institute podcast. This is a show about how artists use technology to tell story, and I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Welcome back to our 2021 Oscars coverage. As I mentioned last week, we're doing things a little differently this year. We are devoting entire individual episodes to three of our favorite awards: Best Sound, Best Cinematography, and Best Animated Feature. This week, we're focusing on the nominees in the Best Cinematography category. We have on the show for you today Sean Bobbitt, the cinematographer of Judas and the Black Messiah, Erik Messerschmidt, the cinematographer of Mank, and Phedon Papamichael, who shot The Trial of the Chicago 7. As always, we invite all of the nominees to join us in conversation, but unfortunately, Dariusz Wolski, who shot News of the World, and Joshua James Richards, the cinematographer of Nomadland, are currently on location shooting new movies, and they were unable to join us. There was some truly incredible camera work done this year, and I am delighted to speak with these true artists of the craft. Joining me today for this conversation is my colleague Stuart Bowling, who is the Director of Content and Creative Relations at Dolby, and he consults on the technical side of things with many of the top directors of photography. So I'm thrilled to have Stuart joining me for these conversations. So first up, Stuart and I sat with the nominee for Judas and the Black Messiah, cinematographer Sean Bobbitt, who joined us from London. All right, well, Sean Bobbitt, thanks for coming and joining us on the Dolby Institute podcast. This is your first Academy Award nomination, isn't it?
It is, yes. And thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. First of all, congratulations. What a great first nomination and a great film to get nominated for. I wish that you were going to get the full-on Dolby Theater Academy Awards night experience. But, you know, sad to say we're all living in the COVID reality still, so we do the best that we can.
Yeah. I think my mom is going to be very upset that I don't get the whole thing. But, I'll just have to try harder and get another one at some point, or even get this one.
I'd say that one of the things that has struck me in looking at your films again is you tend to light in a very naturalistic way and use a lot of natural light sources and kind of hide light sources in natural kind of sources. So is that something that kind of was your eye trained by your experiences doing documentary films and news in that sense?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, there are two great things that news and documentaries teach you as a cameraman. Well, actually, there are many things, but two primary things. One is speed, which everyone loves, and the other is, you are trained to see light and available light, and to assess it immediately, and figure out how you can use it, how you can adjust it. You just have been presented with so many different lighting situations all over the world that you develop this amazing recognition of light. And an understanding of color temperature, a really deep understanding of color temperature as well. So when it came time to actually move into the world of drama, it was like, okay, this location is this, and this. The dramatic intent is this, and this. The time of day is this. Okay, well, let's set up the lighting in a way that's going to capture that moment in time and hold it long enough for us to shoot the whole scene. And so, yeah, I do light in a naturalistic way if the script calls for it.
Right.
That's the thing of being a cinematographer. I've always believed that you should be able to shoot in every possible genre, and I've done that to greater or lesser success. Everything except a musical. Which, it might happen one day. You never know. Keep it open
now. Musical.
But, I really...
I'd like to see a Steve McQueen musical, for sure.
You well might.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, but, and the documentary thing, I traveled the world with... initially with three lights, three mini redheads. And with those things, you have to do everything. by the end of the time I was doing documentaries, I was traveling with 9 heads, and people hated me because of the excess baggage. And, I was very fortunate. Most of the soundmen I worked with were actually, some of them, better lighters than I was. So that between us, we could quickly get together a very sophisticated lighting setup for interviews, which is portraiture.
So Shaka King is the director and worked on the script for Judas and the Black Messiah. Can you tell us a little bit more specifically about those conversations that you had with Shaka at the beginning of the process? Did he have a specific look for the film that he wanted to go for? Were there influences that you guys talked about, or how did you work with him to develop the signature visual style for this film?
Well, I first met Shaka. I was grading another film in New York, and we met for a quick cup, what was going to be a cup of tea, but what went on for an awful lot longer than that. Immediately I was taken by Shaka's general demeanor. He's a big lad, and has a great humor to him, but he's also very focused, very eloquent. And it was obvious that he had done a lot of work on this film, and he knew the story, he knew the history, and that this was a passion piece. This was something that was important. And having read the script, I absolutely understood this is an important story that for a lot of people, particularly white people, had been lost over history. It's a story a constant story that needs to be told. And he had with him, on his computer, about over 300 stills photographs of Chicago from that time. And just going through those, it was, it was almost, to me, when you're looking at them, the black and white ones were astounding. And a little bit later in production, I did say to Shaka, look, we should shoot in black and white. And he just went, no. Yeah. So that was that. But the color.
That's such a switch. Usually the director's like, oh, I'd love to do this in black and white. But it's interesting looking at the film, the use of color is so powerful in this film.
Well,
right?
and that's what we came to, because the color photographs were, of course, all Kodachrome and Ektachrome. And just slightly faded. But they still had those deep blacks. And that wonderful palette, that sort of slightly pingy palette that has just slightly drifted off a bit on those primary colors. And, it's not a docudrama, it's not a documentary. It's a full-on drama, but we still wanted to create a very subtle sense of period. And so that's what we looked at initially, were those colors. And once you start seeing the locations as well, the locations tell you things. Lots of unexpected things. And for example, we're in Cleveland. Cleveland was sadly a great mix or a great match for Chicago in the late 1960s, because it still hasn't recovered from the late 1960s. And there was a green color that kind of kept reappearing, and particularly in the upstairs in the classroom and in the hallways of the Black Panther headquarters, which, we very quickly embraced. It just felt that was the color of that era. And we kept finding it all over Cleveland. So that kind of became a natural base for the colors. And, looking at all that Kodachrome stuff as well, particularly the nighttime exterior stuff from the era, you get all these mixed color temperatures. And that's something that has always, interested me. And
you're talking about from street lamps,
street fronts,
light coming from windows,
cars coming in, lights, windows, all of these things. In those days, there was sort of the color temperatures were all over the place, and as a result, you get these fantastic nighttime palettes. And so that was something else that we were really sort of keyed into and wanted to work with. But also, that mix of color temperature gives you a fantastic ability to create depth in the image through the use of color. And that's something that always fascinates me and always interests me. And that, goes directly back to news and documentary days where you're working in a real place, which has these amazing color kind of mixes. And so it's always something that I've embraced and tried to work with and recreate.
Yeah, I love the scene where they pull up to the bar at night and you have that the neon of the bar sign reflecting in the car window.
Yeah, that's actually CG.
Oh, okay, that's what.
Yeah. I wish I was that clever. And everything.
Wow, that pops.
I think you're talking about. I think you're talking about this. You may be talking about one of my favorite shots, which is when Bill picks up Fred for the first time in the car, and the car is the camera's clearly on a car mount. It's a long shot. Bill turns the car around, pulls up, and then at some point you did a really tricky handoff to a handheld camera to a camera operator as the car pulls off and away out of frame. It was just such a delightful, fun, like whimsical kind of shot.
Well, that was something that Shaka had mentioned very early on. Could we make it so that the camera stays behind and then pans with the car? And we spent months trying to figure out how to do that and thinking
how to hide that transition.
Well, not and also we were looking at using electromagnets so that we could actually stick a Steadicam underneath it and with an electromagnet mount it and pull it away so that it was seamless. We looked at all these different ideas, mechanical and electrical and this, that, and the other, and in the end, we just used it's what you call it, a fast mount thing that there's just a little clip on the side, you unclip it. And what I did, because I operate as well, was that, I was standing in the middle of the road with a grip and a camera assistant. So as the car pulls up, we just walk up to it. I grab the top of the camera. As the Panthers get into the car, it shakes.
It shakes, right, yeah.
And as it shakes, we clipped it and just lifted it slightly. And then as the car drove away, I just let it go and then panned. And I have to say, that is my favorite shot in the whole film. It really, and it amazes, it's very gratifying, a number of people who've noticed it. Well, gratifying and annoying, because in one way, you want these things to be unnoticeable so that people, it's a subconscious thing that goes on. And they're like, what? But not a big enough what to throw them out of the film.
You chose the Arri Alexa large format.
Yeah.
And then the mini LF as well, right?
Yeah. No, really a very conscious decision as well. One thing that was absolutely crucial was that we get a true and accurate color rendition on everyone's face. And the LF, you've just got more picture information there because you've just got more chips. And when we come into a grade, you just have more stuff to play with in terms of color grading. And it really, there's also, I'd worked with the LF on a previous film and loved it because of the shadow, the drop-off. You compare it to a normal Alexa, and you will never work with a normal Alexa again because the LF has a truly photographic grayscale of drop-off. And it's really just wonderful on faces.
Did you guys have to add any film grain?
We did, yes.
Okay.
A really subtle film grain to it, which we hope is sort of unnoticeable. A lot of people think we did shoot it on film.
It does look very filmic.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that is Tom Poole. Tom Poole's the colorist I work out with and have worked with for 12 years or more, maybe even. And he comes from a film background, and he has his special sauce, we call it, which comes in many, many different flavors. And he creates a very filmic look, which is what we wanted, that ectochrome, Kodachrome feel. You need a touch of grain in there. You need that contrast. And so, that's what he created. And I think, it's a stunning look.
There's so much contrast in the movie, though. Like in all of the shots, like in the bar at night where they're playing pool, the halation of light coming down, that kind of smoky '60s atmosphere was just all beautifully captured.
That's actually a great transition, because one of the clips that the studio gave us to talk about is that imagine what we could accomplish together. This is Fred Hampton going into the bar to meet with the some of the guys from the Crowns to propose that they work together.
This is Crown's territory.
We don't want no trouble, brother. We just passing through.
Crowns protected Martin Luther King when he was here in 1966.
When he got his head split open. Damn near killed by a mob of crackers throwing Irish confetti. Bang up job, y'all.
Hey! Back up!
Whoa. No need for that, brother. We on our way. We dig. I got a message for the big man. Tell him the Panthers want to sit down with the Crowns. Imagine what we could accomplish together.
The location itself was just so right. I mean, when we first looked at it, it did need a lot of work from the art department. But the way it was set out geographically worked very well with the story points that we needed to hit. So it was a very exciting place. I spent a lot of time in there just looking at it. And part of my process is that I'll go to, if it's a real location, I'll go there as often as I can and spend as much time there as I can and just take digital stills from every angle and take those back, and then I put them into Lightroom and I give them a grade. And I do different grades for different things, so that when I sit down with Shaka and we're talking shots, I can then pull these images up of the location itself. So you've got a really good idea of the geography and what might happen or you might wish to happen in that location. And at the same time, they'd have a grade on it. So we could start to open the discussions about the overall look of the film. You know, yes, we like this. No, we don't like that. Maybe a bit more of this, maybe a bit more of that. So it's all part of that creation of the look and, you know, breaking the scenes down into shots.
Another one of the clips that that Warner Brothers was kind enough to send over to us was the "You Can't Murder Freedom" scene. This is Fred Hampton's kind of big speech. I am a revolutionary at the church, which is just visually, it's such an arresting sequence, and I think there's a lot for us to dig into and discuss. So let's take a look at this clip.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom. Hey, I'm revolutionary. Hey, I'm revolutionary. Hey, I'm revolutionary. Hey, I'm revolutionary. Let me hear the people beat.
This is such a crucial scene. There is so much going on, and it really is kind of the dramatic center of the film. And after this scene, things are going to change. So it was really important to get it right. And so Shaka and I spent a lot of time talking about this scene and breaking it down and figuring out what the most important moments are. And how to go about doing it. And the other, huge issue we had was that we had only one day on that location. So, to shoot a scene of that scale, and I have to say a remarkable feat on everyone's part, but specifically the first AD, Benita Allen. I mean, it's just the most amazing scheduling to get a crowd of that size ready to go and to keep it moving and to get that whole thing shot. Because most of it is single camera. The whole of that film is primarily single camera. We had 2 cameras in that day, just because there was no other way to do it. So, and also for us to be able to move from shot to shot quickly enough, that we couldn't afford to stick a whole bunch of lighting instruments into the set itself. So it is lit primarily from the outside. And we have every lighting instrument for about 3 or 4 surrounding states, and every crane and, everything. Cleveland has no resources at all. So, for Jeremy Long, my gaffer, to light that was a real feat. And then on the inside, we worked with different size LED panels to give us that bit of molding light for the close-ups and things. But, if we had tried to put lights and stands in there, we would never have finished the day.
So, Sean, thank you so much. This is a remarkable film. It's a story that I think very few people know about. I'm really grateful to Shaka King and to you and the rest of the team for telling this story. And congratulations on your first Academy Award nomination. May there be many, many more. And thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Next up, we have the nominee for his work on Mank, director of photography Erik Messerschmidt, who joined us for a Dolby Institute webinar recently, which our colleague Tom Graham moderated. Thank you, Tom, for sharing this video with us so that we can share it with you.
It was such a fantastic movie, and we met up and did a panel at IBC a few years ago when actually people could meet together, and it was on the second season of Mindhunter, and this same group did that, and now you've moved on and you've created this amazing picture, Mank, that is such a different style. And I have to say, all of us involved in the world of Dolby Vision have been pining and dreaming of a black and white movie in high dynamic range. And so this absolutely delivers on every front. And I have to say, I was super excited, Erik, to see your card in the front with the high dynamic range label. Can you tell us about that?
It was a total surprise. I think I remember texting with Eric White months ago now, and it was always like, oh, have you gotten the most recent? He would send us revisions. He was grading it remotely, or well, not for him, but for us, and we would get revisions, but it was never the whole movie. It was like scenes or sections or pieces or. And he said, oh, have you seen your title card yet? Have you seen the titles yet? Have you seen the titles yet? And I said, no, I haven't seen the titles yet. And then I saw it and I was like, oh, cool. So that I didn't know anything about that. That was something that I guess, I don't know, Peter, you and Fincher worked up, or I don't know where that came from actually.
Obviously you guys have been shooting digital for quite a long time. You're big fans of red cameras. And so how did you decide to go with the special sensor and sort of remove color from the sensor itself?
Well, initially, the three of us talked about it, and I mean, initially, I had suspected that maybe the color camera would work to our advantage, so that Erik would have the color information to work with in the grade, and I think both of us were a little bit apprehensive, actually. I don't want to speak for Erik, but at least I was like, boy, that could really come in handy, and so Erik, Peter, and I and David talked about it, and we decided that we would shoot a test and we would compare the color camera against the black and white camera. And it wasn't really about nostalgia at all. It was like just about empirical testing. And we compared the two sensors. Well, we actually shot several color sensors, and we shot the black and white sensor. And I think we were in the theater for all of like 18 seconds before we all unanimously agreed that there was no chance we were going to shoot color. It was like, and it just, I don't know, for me anyway, it had so much more tonal depth and range, and it had this kind of silvery tactile quality to it that the desaturated color sensor just didn't have. It looked thin, and it didn't have the same bite, and it didn't have. We needed speed because we were doing some deep focus work with with the lenses quite closed down, and it wasn't even apparent to us initially. I mean, all our initial tests were all about kind of the quality of the image, and then as it turned out, the black and white camera, we felt like we could really comfortably rate at 3200 ASA, which of course was really beneficial for us in terms of the deep focus, and certainly from a budget standpoint.
And so by deep focus, you mean like in the San Simeon dinner or party where everybody's sitting there, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, almost the entire film was shot between a T8 and T11. So, I mean, the lens is nearly closed. So it's, even at 800 ASA, it would have required substantial amounts of light. And, the monochrome camera was really clean at like 1600 ASA. And we looked at it and we said, God, we can push this further. And we looked at it at 3200 ASA, and it had just a little bit of digital noise in it, which looked quite a bit like film grain, which then Erik was able to enhance. So that's where we landed. And I found that as a result, I was using a lot less fill light. Like we were, I could really comfortably expose far to the right. And when I found I was monitoring an SDR, I was closing down early in the exposure curve. I was overprotecting the highlights. And I was using more fill on the set, and then we would get into the HDR grade, and Erik would have to sort of re-equalize the curve. And it turned out I didn't need the fill, and I didn't need to protect the highlights. And I was like, I didn't find that I was that worried about the toe in general. I was always looking at the highlights, particularly in contrasty situations. So the way that we had the LUTs built, especially in the black and white version, was when the monitor clipped, the waveform clipped, and the sensor, the camera told us we were clipped. So I knew empirically that if there wasn't detail on the monitor, there wasn't detail on the sensor, which was incredibly empowering as a DP. I really understood where the exposure curve was, and I could work quite comfortably in the midtones and in the shadows, knowing that I had all that room up top. And so it. And it's true. I mean, I think as much as we want to romanticize the light meter and romanticize the mysticism of it, we all work off the monitor, and David Fincher definitely does. And the confidence it brings him to look at the monitor and feel like it's extremely close to the image that he's going to see when Erik pulls it up in the suite, I think is really important. Has become very important for our process.
There are beautiful, incredible shots that are pieces of art, and the camera work and there's no shaky cam in the vocabulary, right? It's everything is perfectly crafted. And so talk a little bit about the lens flare look and how that was purposeful.
We had done a really extensive series of lens tests. I had done I projected when you say projected, you take the lenses and you put the lenses on a projector, and it projects a focus screen up, and you can evaluate resolution and distortion, barrel distortion, and chromatic aberration and spherical aberration. And I went to Panavision, I went to Kesel camera, and I evaluated 24 different sets of lenses. And mostly what we were looking for was sharpness, and sharpness at very deep f-stops. And turns out, to no surprise, the most modern lenses are in fact the sharpest. But modern lenses also, unfortunately, don't flare particularly well. In fact, it's very difficult to get them to flare, and it's very difficult to get them to flare in the style of the sort of simple lenses of the 1940s. Modern lenses have multiple groups of optics that are managing things like aberration and astigmatism and stuff. The lenses of the 1940s have just 3 or 4 pieces of glass, and so they have lots of flare characteristics that modern lenses do not have. And we're quite interested in these sort of halation flares that lenses of the period produce, and even vintage lenses from the 50s and 60s that we use now, to achieve certain effects don't give those effects. So we had pulled a series of references, and I sent some to Peter and Erik and to David, and then David had some ideas, and so all the lenses have been art directed by Peter's team after the fact, which has been one of the joys of my time on the movie, was like getting those and seeing, oh, like maybe that could be a little bit bigger, and talking to Fincher about it, and like, what if this just striated a little bit more, and let's go bigger here, and yeah, that was really fun. But it's all, I mean, it's all trickery. None of that is actually was actually captured that way, which is kind of the way we like it. There's a shot in the movie where it's the Irving Thalberg funeral. And that set was one where we wanted these dramatic shafts of light coming in, and we had to, for a variety of reasons, we had to shoot it from the side of the room where there were no windows. So we shot it, and we put some theatrical lights up in the frame and filled the room with smoke and projected shafts of light through the smoke, and then added the windows later.
One of my, amazing scenes that I really think throws back to that era, right, is the idea of shooting the day for night stuff outside in the gardens of San Simeon. So maybe you guys could walk us through how fun that was to do.
It was, I was shooting in Africa. I was doing this TV show called Raised by Wolves, and we were doing all our night work day for night. And whenever I'm not shooting with Fincher, I send him stills of what I'm doing. And I was like, hey, look at this, look what we're doing here. And we were chatting about this day for night work, and he said, oh, that's interesting, that's beautiful, that's kind of cool. And then when Mank came up, he was scouting and he was looking at the locations, and the locations they had found that he liked were Huntington Gardens in Pasadena, California, and the backyard of a mansion in San Marino, and both of which were perfect for what he wanted to do in terms of the digital animals and the amount of real estate we had to cover, and the scope that he wanted the audience to appreciate. But they were also incredibly logistically challenging to light. We didn't really have access. We were shooting sort of at the tail end of the summer, where we would have wanted a slightly longer night. If we were going to shoot it night for night, it would have been very expensive. And he said, well, God, what if we just did it day for night, like you did? And I was like, okay, that's an interesting idea. And of course, that's exactly what they would have done in 1940 in that scenario. And so we went back and we looked at it with respect to this. We had been scouting it as if we were lighting it initially, and of course that by the time we made that decision, we then had to take into account the position of the sun. We looked at the position of the sun, and we knew we had to, because we wanted it either backlit or side lit, so we knew we had to get this shot at this time of the day and this shot at this time of the day, and then we did a whole series of tests. And in the early days of film, what one would have done is underexpose the film, and with the help of some filtration, and add artificial fill. And I knew from my experience, both with Fincher but also on the TV series, that there was no added value of underexposing the camera. That actually what we should do is build a LUT, a viewing LUT. Which basically is just helping me judge fill values, knowing that there is plenty of detail in there for Erik to work with, so he can dodge areas of foliage, and he can push down foreground, and fully aware that those things we would have to do in order for it to be believable. So what we're getting is a really thick, rich negative if you were to look at it ungraded, it would look crazy because it was super bright, and there was lots of artificial fill on the actors, way more than you would if you were doing a traditional day exterior. But then when it's all brought down through the help of the viewing LUT that we built, and we actually built a couple versions. We built sort of a softer curve for overcast viewing, and then we built sort of steeper curve for sunny viewing. We would bring in that fill light, and it would approximate roughly the gamma that we thought Erik would be working with in the grade, and then he was able to work with it from there.
I can't thank you guys enough. Everybody, if you haven't seen Mank in Dolby Vision, check it out. As Erik Messerschmidt said, best viewed probably on an LG type OLED display. And again, thank you guys. You're absolutely fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Erik, for taking the time to speak with us. We're going to wrap up today with our final nominee in the Best Cinematography category, Phedon Papamichael, the director of photography for The Trial of the Chicago 7. Phedon happened to be quarantining at home in Greece when we reached out. Lucky for us, and for you, since Phedon is a really fun and delightful interview. All right, we're talking today with Phedon Papamichael. Phedon, thank you so much. You're joining us from Greece, where you're on COVID lockdown, unfortunately. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about the Trial of the Chicago 7. I think this is my understanding. This is your second Academy Award nomination, right? This is you were originally first nominated for Alexander Payne's movie Nebraska.
That's right. So this is the second one. It's my fifth A.S.C one, which I'm very happy about. And no BAFTA this year, but Ford vs. Ferrari got BAFTA last year and A.S.C. And so this was actually, I mean, I know people say that all the time, like, oh, it was this was truly a surprise. I didn't expect it. I must say I expected it more last year.
Well, Phedon, I'm curious. I mean, when you first, you first got the script for Chicago 7. You're going to meet with Aaron Sorkin about it. I'm sure you read the script. You must have thought, like, my God, half of this movie takes place in a courtroom.
I did.
Was that exciting? Was that exciting
No,
to you?
exciting.
Was it daunting? Like,
it's not exciting. I talked to Oliver Stapleton once, and he goes, "I get a script, and I like kind of go through it, and if it's all dialogue, I pass."
Right.
I must say, I mean, I did read it, of course. I did read Molly's Game also. It was 200 pages. I hate reading scripts. It was a great read. Molly's Game was a great read, and this one was...
It's a fun movie.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely has something with the rhythm. So I felt like we can do something. It's not going to be a stagnant courtroom drama. He's a smart guy. He definitely relies on the cinematographer and the editor, I would say almost completely, to get the movie done. So in terms of, the Academy Award nomination, I mean, the amount of work we do is goes in a way beyond the traditional role of a cinematographer. Aaron is the first one who'll tell you the same thing, but he has very specific things. It's all triggered based on beats in the screenplay. But in terms of how you're going to cover the movie and what shots you're going to get, that's up to you. So all that, and then of course we did have all these opportunities of leaving the courtroom, going outside, covering the riots, which, again, we had very limited means, but we did shoot in Chicago, the actual location. There was the Haskell-Wexler footage that gave us, I actually didn't, at the time, we didn't know we're going to be integrating that into the film, but we did watch it, of course, because it was a direct guide and reference to the amount of tear gas and the amount of violence. But it was a sunny.
So Phedon, you're talking about this is Haskell Wexler's movie, Medium Cool, from which was, so he shot it in the riot.
No, he actually was. He was actually in the actual event with his 60 millimeter color camera, and he built a narrative. Fictional story and a character, but used the actual events to construct his fictional story within that frame, which was, interesting. And I think maybe the first time that was actually done, where you're, mixing sort of a fictional narrative character and actually also capturing all this original footage. We are recreating this event and using his footage spurse and to intersperse with our footage. Not trying to use it and blend it, but just kind of we actually made it black and white. It was originally shot in color, Haskell stuff. But but there's very different energy going away when we leave the courtroom. Again, multiple cameras. I literally told my camera operators, Alan Pierce and Michael Fuchs, to pretend to be Haskell Wexler, get in the crowd, and just make a documentary. And so I mean, it was fun. And I mean, Aaron's scripts are fun. I mean, like I said, he's not very technical. It's only his second movie. He's a filmmaker. I mean, he understands cinema. But he won't tell you. He's not like Mangold. He's not gonna say like, boom the camera down a little bit and okay, like start a little pushing now, and like he's not that specific. But he knows what he wants, and he also knows what he doesn't want and what he doesn't need and all that. So.
Well, so how did those days go in the courtroom? Like, did you storyboard, or was there a shot list, or would you?
No. I mean, literally, it'd be bring in the cast, read the scene, and then I'd call the script supervisor over and I'd dictate her a shot list. I go, we're going to do 3 cameras here, then we're going to move 3 cameras. I had 3 cameras here. It's like, 3 cameras are here, a floorboard, then they're going to move in, then we're going to do this, then we're going to turn around. And then I also had to block shoot scenes because I had to do 3-4 scenes in one direction because I didn't have a crowd in the courtroom. The courtroom by Shane Valentino was beautifully designed, built in an old church, but it ended up big and bigger than, we really were budgeted to fill. It's almost we built a set that like we really can fill with our budget with extras. And we really also didn't have VFX money to, same in the Grant Park in Chicago. We did get to shoot at the actual location, which was fantastic. And, when they say take the hill and they're pointing to the hill with grand statues on top, I mean, that can intercut directly with Haskell Wexler stuff. But we had like 150 people and there were like 10,000 people in the park. So, well,
our friends at Netflix they were gracious enough to give us a couple of clips to talk about. So, yeah, so we do have this is a scene that happens pretty late in the film, so they're doing the kind of the mock cross examination of Tom Hayden. This is when they bring the tape recorder out and his big, when we find out that he's had this speech: if the blood is going to flow, let it flow all over the city. And one of the things I love about this sequence is there's a lot of intercutting. All the things that you're talking about, all the non-courtroom stuff, you've got the flashbacks to the night, and then you've also got Abby Hoffman kind of narrating this from the stand-up stage of the club.
Hey, Jesus, what the hell is wrong with... Rennie was just trying to get the police off of the kid.
Get the police off of the kid?
Yes.
How? He was grabbing them?
Get off of him! Hey,
I'd like to say to the cops back there that we're allowed to be here. We have permits for this.
And out of nowhere... It was 6 armed police officers versus Rennie Davis and a pocket protector, so I can understand that response.
How about your response? Let's press play. The whole world is watching!
They've just beaten Rennie, Dave.
Listen to me. We can still get everyone out of here safely.
No, we can't.
But, when you're cutting away to these clips, you also had to understand, like I said, the rhythm of the screenwriting, which is like you're going away to these images sometimes for like 5 seconds and 3 seconds. So you have to design these shots so they can function in that way. It's no point in designing some elegant crane move or dolly move. Like this is, cutting to Abby in the club going, and then the cops, beat up this, and then like you're cutting to it and it's like 5 seconds, boom, you're back to Tom Hayden like in his mock interrogation. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I did say that, but you have to be aware of the writing very much so as a cinematographer. And I think that's the biggest challenge. It's not necessarily what is a great shot, what is a beautiful dolly or camera move, or what is a cinematic wide shot. Like, these things won't play in Aaron's script. So you have to be conscious of that, and you have to, accommodate like that particular style of storytelling with the photography, and that, it's great. It's great. But it takes somebody experienced, because that's not always what we do as cinematographers. We always want to have beautiful images, but it's like we gotta, make the writing work. And then Aaron is aware of certain images, but I'm still trying to give them more than he can express to me, because I know he's gonna, especially in the courtroom, I know he's gonna need a reaction shot of the jury. I know he's gonna need a reaction shot of the Black Panthers or the press. I know he's gonna need reaction shot of the other defendants when somebody is on the stand. And he doesn't necessarily think of that, because it doesn't say on page cut to a reaction shot of, but I know, and I just know like he's gonna need it. So often he'd be like, good, we're done, right? I'm like, not really. I mean, we should really get this and this and this, but I also don't want to be telling him like we also all want to go home, and, now we really need to get this. And then I've also talked to Alan, the editor, and he's like, please make sure we get some extra stuff. And, he also cut Molly's game. So he, it's, you find yourself, I mean, I want to serve a director, but I know in the end he's going to be appreciative of all these other things I'm getting. But I also don't want to give him stuff that for sure he's not going to need, which, I mean, since I direct also, and since I've been in the editing room, and, like the first movie I directed, and actually Wally Pfister shot, I mean, I would cover 7-page scenes in 2 shots, and I learned my lesson, and I've learned it from working with Mank.
You mean you learned your lesson when you got in the cutting room and you had nowhere to go?
Yep.
So we do have one more scene from Netflix that they gave us to talk about, and this is I think this is the very end of the movie. This is I think the sentencing hearing. Tom Hayden is admonished by the judge to keep his remarks brief and non-political, and he stands up and reads out all the names of the dead, which is a very, very powerful moment. And then you have that great shot where you pull back, through the courtroom and see everybody responding to it. And I think that's the end of the film.
Yeah, that's the last shot. It's actually a single shot. I want to briefly talk about that because, one thing Aaron said throughout pre-production, it's like, we need to come up with something for the last shot. And he had a few specific shots that he actually kept bringing up during production. Like, one was when they throw the Molotov at the recruitment center, like that. You can't read recruitment center till the Molotov cocktail hits it and lights it up. One was the glass bottle being thrown in front of the National Guard, like when they're trying to cross the bridges. And then one was the end shot. He kept saying like the end shot. So I was trying to come up with like a last image. And then we came up with a shot that starts on, the DA's office, Joseph Ronald standing up, and his partner saying, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm paying respect to the fallen," and he leaves, and that follows him out, and we rotate back around past the sketch artist onto our defendants, and we pull back in court, and it looks like a big Techno crane pullback, but of course this was a practical location in New Jersey, and I couldn't get a Techno crane. I could never do a shot like that. So I built this wooden ramp that people were hiding with their bodies, and then we did this on Steadicam, and then the Steadicam, rotates around and then starts walking backwards up this wooden ramp that we had built in the courtroom, and all the way almost to the ceiling, and it looks like this big pullback crane shot, but it's really kind of low tech.
Right.
And so I was quite proud of like figuring that out and how to do that. And then Michael Fuchs, the Steadicam operator, is very precise and very good. And I usually work with Scott Sakamoto, who obviously did The Revenant and all these. And I'm like, you gotta do it like Scott Sakamoto, and he's like, he was great. He's definitely one of the new, very excellent Steadicam operators. So lots of respect to him for not just that shot, but like throughout. Because I really have high standards when it comes to Steadicam operating, and I always tell him I want it to look like a dolly.
Right.
And it's hard in the expanded anamorphic format. So.
Why was it important to you to shoot this movie in the anamorphic format?
Well, because again, similar to Ford versus Ferrari, it's always, it's a lot of people interacting, and I think it's a good format. It's very different than Ford versus Ferrari, but it's basically a group of men who are trying to accomplish something, and it calls for a lot of group shots and raking reaction shots and stuff, and it just lends itself to it. And I do like the large format fall off, but I always like the aspect ratio. I love the older glass, the C series, and in this case it actually was more T series expanded anamorphics than Dan Sasaki. We started on Ford versus Ferrari. It's become quite popular since, I think. I think they've expanded over 60% of their lenses, but we were really kind of dealing with prototypes on Ford versus Ferrari. This time we came out of New York, and I found there was a bigger selection of lenses, and I'm about to use kind of the same formula on Indiana Jones. So trying to gather those.
When the voters get to the cinematography category, what do you hope that they're taking away and looking for in Chicago 7?
Well, I do think, it's very hard to separate the craft from, very powerful film. We always profit from the film being good. I've done very beautiful films that have beautifully photographed films that haven't been received or just are not that good. I think one of my most beautiful movies is $1 Million Hotel, but it didn't really find an audience except in Poland. And they loved it at Camera Image. You kind of have to get lucky. You gotta have to get do your best work on a good movie. You get lucky when it's a really good movie and it also looks really good. And then, I always say, I don't want people coming up to me after screening and going, look great, man, really beautiful movie. That's not a good sign. You want them coming and go, that was a great movie, man. I love, Sideways, they come up to me like no one will come and say that's a great looking movie, because it's not, but it's a really appropriately shot movie, and the movie is really good, and it's standing the test of time. And I watch it now and I go, I was kind of down on it. I remember Vilmos Zsigmond said to me, no, Phedon, it's great, it's perfectly shot. And I go, I don't know, it looks so, not so, but now I watch it and it's I think it's just perfectly shot. So I guess Chicago 7, it's, the overall, what it triggers in people, it has to be in harmony. Everything has to be in harmony. And it's very hard to get everything is in harmony. We always try, of course, but, the performance, so ultimately, I think the test of time and what people remember, I do think people will remember Ford versus Ferrari just because it's a really good movie.
Absolutely.
No one's going to remember that it get nominated for cinematography or not. Who knows? And in a way, who cares? So.
Well, Phedon, I know it's getting late in Greece. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Congratulations on the Academy Award nomination for The Trial of the Chicago 7. It is streaming right now on Netflix in Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. So please go enjoy this amazing movie. Phedon, that was a really fun conversation. It was really great talking to you today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Was fun. Thank you for making it different. And yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.
I'd like to thank once again the nominees who are able to join us today and to congratulate all of the nominees for their incredible work in the Best Cinematography category this year. And thank you to our friends at Warner Brothers and Netflix for helping us pull these conversations together and providing clips so quickly during the very busy awards season. I hope these conversations inspire you to check out all of the nominated films, and we have links to all 5 in our show notes. If you enjoyed this series, please consider leaving us a rating or a review on iTunes or on the Apple Podcasts app. It really helps raise awareness for the series and helps us continue to grow. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our new dedicated podcast feed, which you can find via the link in our show notes or wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Dolby. You won't want to miss our next episode, where we'll be interviewing the nominees for the Best Animated Feature category. This is a really fun episode with a lot of soul, and wolves, and a few magic elves, voyage to the moon, and sheep, naturally. Until then, thank you for joining us. This has been the Sound and Image Lab, the Dolby Institute podcast, and I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. The producer and editor of the show is Michael Coleman. Executive producers are Amanda Schneider and Jack Ferry. Production support is by Taylor Hines, and our production coordinator is Tristan Enriquez. Thank you for listening.